Whether you're getting your news from TikTok or from CNN, the news about being young and looking for jobs is not positive. The stock market might be up and companies might be posting record profits, but it seems like every company is either laying people off or just not hiring. And the people they're not hiring are graduates, young people. Within tech, there's even talk of a job apocalypse where there's a massive oversupply of tech people that way outstrips demand. What was just 10 years ago almost seen as a guaranteed path to a safe, secure, and highly profitable career now looks more and more like the auto worker industry throughout the end of the last century. AI and automation is threatening to take jobs, and even Amazon is building warehouses almost entirely without staff. So it's not like there's a pick and pack a job for you instead. According to the news, you're basically screwed. And there is some truth to that, but you might be asking yourself, how do I pick a trade or an education that's going to give me the best odds of a job and ideally relatively secure employment? That's the question we're going to try and answer today. I'm Mike. I've got a background from pharma tech and consulting. I've held C-level roles in international companies, and I have degrees in business, HR, and psychology. On this channel, I pick apart why companies do the things they do, and I provide advice on navigating the corporate world. And today, we're talking about picking a good career path. Let's get stuck in. There are three distinct pieces to this conversation. First, I'm going to cover a little bit about the reality of the broader job market today and what's going on, broadly speaking. Second, there are no definitive predictions for what the future will hold, but I'll cover some trends and things that are likely important to be mindful of when picking a path. Third, we'll talk about what gives you the best odds on the job market at a core level. Tech isn't the entire job market, but right now it takes up a lot of headspace. So why is there a job apocalypse in tech? Tech has matured massively. If you ignore AI and focus on classic tech, it's an industry that is becoming very stable and mature. Google and Microsoft and a whole host of other companies recently posted their quarterly earnings, and you're seeing that their revenues are growing massively without them increasing their headcounts. Google massively grew their cloud business and their ad revenues. Amazon's ad revenues also grew substantially without adding staffing. This is in large part down to the fact that these companies are now so established that the need for tons of new developers just isn't there anymore. They can grow with the same amount of people that they already are. And this obviously drives an overall lower demand. AI hasn't significantly replaced any jobs yet, despite the premonitions, but tech companies are choosing to invest massively. They are investing in AI, LLMs, and adjacent technologies. These capital expenditures are in part being financed by cost-cutting and hiring freezes. They are willing to pay for the top 0.1% of AI talent, but a regular coder is just not high on their demand list. And three, too many people rush to get a tech degree. This is simply supply and demand economics. Go back 10, 15 years and you'll find news broadcasts about how we're not educating enough people to deliver on the demand for tech resources. And what did that lead to? Well, pretty much every college in the Eastern and Western Hemisphere ramped up the total number of slots for tech degrees on their campuses. Also, a vast number of young people flocked to this sure thing in anticipation that there would be a great career for them. And there was for a time, but now we're simply pumping out more people than the market needs. It's not the case that degrees now these days are worthless. That would be a wrong conclusion. But there are too many people with these degrees. And this has happened before. And it will happen again. Just wait. Right now, we're hearing stories about how we don't have enough tradesmen, home builders, and those kind of people. As for predictions, I think there are three realities when it comes to the future that we have to get used to. First, since the 1950s, the job market has generally trended more and more towards people having more jobs over their lifespan and shorter employments on average. Also, the likelihood of ending up doing different things, so not staying in the same industry or markedly changing expectations towards your skill set, are just more and more the norm. You shouldn't expect this trend to reverse. What you're doing today is not what you'll be doing in 10 years, and you'll likely have to accept that you need to be constantly learning and developing new skills. Second, right now, nobody wants to hire young people, but in general, across most of the Western world and the Eastern, the population is aging. In the future, pretty much everywhere, there will be fewer young people than old people. This will lead to retirement ages going up, but I also do believe at some point it will lead to higher demand for younger people. There will be fewer of you, so there will at some point be a bigger fight to get a hold of you, at least for some types of jobs. And third, nobody really has a clue what AI will mean, but it will mean something. We are seeing a tendency towards some types of jobs needing a lot fewer grunts and having higher demand for really, really good people. Being average at something doesn't look like a safe place to be. It's more and more, at least I think, trending in a lot of places towards 1% jobs. And by that, I think the example of car manufacturing is a good one. You don't see production lines anymore with thousands of people. Most of the production is done by robots, but there's still a couple of guys that maintain the robots. Those people are the 1%. It's the production engineers designing an entire production line that are still needed, not the day-to-day operational engineer. I do think this is a trend we'll see more. Which brings me neatly to how you pick the right job. While you're busy thinking about which job to pick, then also consider which channel to pick. If this channel is resonating with you, click the subscribe button. It's hugely appreciated. Thanks. Numbers. There's no part of history where I think numbers or the hard sciences weren't the best to get into. If you're standing at the footsteps of Harvard and you're unsure whether arts and literature should be your major or it should be applied mathematics, you go for mathematics. Any day of the week, any year, any decade, any century. Whether it's finance versus HR or architecture versus structural engineering, math, numbers, and data are always going to be a better bet in terms of employment. Generally speaking, and this usually correlates to numbers, but not always, hard sciences are almost always preferable over soft sciences. Astrophysics is going to be a better bet than sociology. Economics is still going to be superior to political science, and becoming a doctor is usually going to be a better choice than becoming a psychologist. Quantifiable, hard science-based skill sets have consistently outperformed on employability compared to softer sciences and studies. Lawyers, legal professionals are in this context what I'd call a hard science. The reason is the nature, the complexity, and the use of law is just similar in the way other hard sciences are adopted and integrated into corporations. Make or fix something. If you're going to do something, choose to do something that makes something. The obvious perspectives on this are the physical trades like carpentry, electricians, plumbing. These people physically build, make, or repair something and are going to be preferable to customer service employees who answer a phone and clear tickets. It doesn't confine itself to the physical world or real world though. A mechanical engineer is going to be more employable by a million miles compared to somebody who picked HR or marketing or finance. Finance might be numbers, but in isolation, you make nothing within finance, other than, of course, money. Doctors are in this maker bucket as well. Engineering, software development are still, relatively speaking, good bets in this sense because you are building something. And no, anthropologists, philosophers, sociologists might build knowledge and insight, but you're not building anything physical. A building, a phone, an app, that's building. Make a product or contribute directly to value creation. Being in product development leads to better employability than being in marketing, generally speaking. One team makes the product, another tells the world about it and makes ads. And ad campaigns is not making the product. Working in HR and developing leadership training is interesting and exciting, but it's not building something in the same way that building an iPhone is. The closer your role is to the actual product, or in the absence of a physical product, the closer you are to value creation or cost mitigation, whatever that may be. And the closer you are to the core of the business, the more employable you'll be. Lawyers are on this cost mitigation side. Finance also. People working within procurement also in some sectors and some industries have huge cost impacts. That's why the roles are often both in demand and relatively well paid. There's always a need for salespeople. Meet the customer. Customer service in the sense of call centers are likely more and more a dying breed, but frontline sales staff are still going to be employable. Doctors, nurses, police officers, they are all, in a sense, customer facing. They're not easily replaceable because part of their role is linked to the physical, social, and emotional connection that they have with the people they help. And again, if you're in finance or QA or QC or HR or facility services, you are not customer facing. Your company and your boss may talk about internal customers, but you need to ignore that for a moment. From a pure employability perspective, being front-facing and truly customer-facing is better than being back-end. Consultants are in this bucket. You can discuss whether or not consultants make something in the purest sense of the word, but you can't deny that being customer-facing is a huge part of their value add. And they work with numbers most of the time. Be the best. This is going to be a tough pill to swallow, but you do need to be the best. I stated earlier that we're seeing this trend towards more and more roles being specialized, or companies at least depending on fewer people for key tasks. We're talking about that robot repair guy I mentioned earlier. In general, the days of going to, Stanford and just scraping through and still getting a great job are, if not coming to an end, then the opening is much smaller. Now is the time where being the top 1% of whatever you do is more important than ever. The further you are from that top 1%, the tougher a time you're going to have. It's a harsh reality, but specifically for people with degrees, we're going from a time where we joked about the unemployability of the top 1% arts and literature student, but the average finance person could still get a job. That's gone. Even the average finance person is going to have a tough time. This is probably the most difficult choice to pin down, but I want you to be a specialist with generalist applicability. And what does that mean? Take a person who went to school and studied electrical engineering with a major in wind turbines. Contrast that to a person that got a degree in general electrical engineering. As a rule of thumb, it's the latter that's going to have more options. When you specialize, you generally lock yourself down in terms of options in the future, and when a market like wind turbines takes a downturn, you are at risk of being difficult to employ. There are exceptions, of course. A neurosurgeon is, all things being equal, going to be a safe, secure specialty where you don't need to demonstrate that your skills are broadly applicable elsewhere within medicine. But for a lot of engineering roles, software development, being able to demonstrate that you can adapt to new technologies is going to be important. Those people right now that are in high demand within AI are not the people that dedicated their lives to only being good at C#. Their minds, their focus was on broader problems and challenges. That flexibility, both in terms of training and skill set, but also in mindset, is one that would be good to adopt if at all possible. Now, none of these things are absolutes, and none of these things are binaries either. You should view them as rules of thumb. So if you're making the assumption that working in marketing is a bad choice based on this, then you've skipped a step or two and misunderstood. Because on the one hand, yes, the generic marketing role does not create the product, but a marketing role that is highly analytical, heavily data-driven, and draws on, for lack of a better phrase, a good understanding of numbers, is likely going to be a better bet than a creative role, which is likely more readily replaceable and in less demand. I'll also give a practical, real-world example of how this logic has held true historically. After the 2008 financial crisis and prior to COVID, you saw a massive spike in demand for different types of corporate and financial analysts working with different levels of predictive modeling. Historically, this had been a job held by people with financial backgrounds, but what you saw in that period was companies like Morgan Stanley actively hiring the best and the brightest from schools like MIT, high-end software developers, statisticians, and even various types of engineers. These were the people that had gone to MIT to achieve a degree within software or tech or engineering, and they ended up in finance. And they did so because they could do math. The hard science skills that they had were transferable to capabilities needed to do financial modeling. These individuals also had generalizable skills, and in the context of Morgan Stanley and companies like them, these people would end up building the products, or at least the models that steered them. Those are the things you need to be mindful of. The numbers, the hard sciences, being close to the customer, making the product or being close to the product. But I also do feel the need to be a little bit quaint and trite here towards the end. The fact is, if you hate working with numbers and you want to work with the soft sciences and you would prefer not to get close to the real customer, then forcing you to do so is likely not going to make you happy in the long run. You need to make a choice also in terms of what will make you happy. But money in the bank and food on the table is usually a little bit more important. And yes, the days of being reasonably good and still being highly employable are definitely approaching an end. Things are tougher, but like I said, youth is also going to become a rarity. It won't be bad to be young in terms of employability forever. So, share your thoughts in the comments. I hope this resonated. Remember to subscribe. Good luck out there. See you soon.